Halle Bailey stars in Disney's new movie, Little Mermaid. And you've seen these videos of young black girls just awesome. Oh, my, seeing this sister as a Little Mermaid. But there's a lot of other people who are not happy. On the YouTube channel with the trailer for the movie, there were 1.5 million thumbs down dislikes, but they disabled it. Folks, they disabled it, took the comments down and everything. We have seen this, look at this, 8.1 million views. We've seen all this conversation back and forth, but it's not just Little Mermaid. What's that new show on HBO? One of them Thrones shows, House of Dragons. I don't watch it. And so, Lord, it's some white folks up in arms because, Lord, it's some black characters. And they complained about how you're getting away from what the book was about. I mean, and the crazy thing is, y'all, we're talking fiction. We're talking what's made up and make believe. Well, Jane Elliott has been doing this work for years. She started this the day after Dr. King was assassinated, April 4th, 1968. And she's been going hard ever since. She joins us right now. And Jane, I know, when we have a promo for my book, White Fear, and you're quoting there and you were saying, look, this nation is getting more racist. The bottom line is these people, I fundamentally believe Trump has unleashed these folks. They are just angry and upset. And this is why I wrote my book. I said how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. They cannot handle the fact that now you're seeing black folks and Latinos and Asian folks just showing up. It's no longer it's white is right, everybody else step back.
For the last 400 years, we have misrepresented or underrepresented or not represented people who are other than white. And now people who are white are complaining because there is one fairy tale that has a black, not black, a dark brown female as the heroine. Why is that such a big deal? I know what's a big deal. White folks are scared to death. They know that within 30 years, white people, as they call themselves, will have lost their numerical majority in the United States of America. And they're scared to death that people of color are going to want to treat us the way we have treated them. And so they have to, we had a president, well, we call him president, who built a wall, spent millions and millions of dollars to build a wall to keep brown-skinned people out because he said brown-skinned people reproduce too rapidly. Now, what we're dealing with right now is a fallout from that kind of attitude and that kind of statement made by the leader of the United States of America. What do you expect little people to do except say the same kinds of things that he is saying and has said and will say unless we put a stop to this nonsense?
Now,
if we would stop using the vocabulary of the 14th and 15th century, if we would stop calling people white because that means purity and goodness, and black because that means savage and evil, if we would start calling people what they are, which is varying shades of brown, we wouldn't have to deal with those two opposites. We have been put on a situation by the Spanish Inquisition, Torquemada and company, were going to make everybody Catholic, and they were killing people they thought weren't Christians. Then they realized they'd killed a bunch of Christians, so they had to find another way to decide whether a person was Christian or not, because you couldn't tell by looking at him, and you still can't. But anyway, so he decided they would use skin color. So the lighter-skinned people were called white, which is the color of goodness and purity, and the darker-skinned people were called black, which is the color of savagery and evil. We have been doing that for another 400, that's only 450 years ago, approximately. And we're still doing it. People, it's time to give it up. Let's grow up. We are in a young nation, but it's time to grow up.
You said something that is on point, and that is they are afraid
scared
that we're
going
to do to them what they did to us. Pat Buchanan wrote that more than 2 decades ago. Mitch Landrieu, in his book, came out a couple of years ago, he actually said, hey, white people, I've known black people all my life. Trust me, don't be scared. They're not going to do to us what we did to them.
But you see, they think that we believe, when we say the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, that the way white people treat others is the way they want to be treated. I don't think that's the way I want to be treated. I don't believe in the golden rule. I believe in the platinum rule that says do unto others as others would have you do unto them. Treat others the way they want to be treated, not the way you want to be treated. But you see, we're using every possible means we can to enhance the idea of the rightness of whiteness. And by doing it, we are proving that we are less intelligent, that we are less civil, that we are less socialized than people of color are, because People of color know better than to act like this. They know better than to complain because the Little Mermaid isn't their color. They have known better than to complain about all those fairy tales that they read all those years and that were pushed on them by teachers all those years, and none of the heroes and none of the heroines to speak of were anything but white.
I had to trip out at the dragon show, and I'm like, yo, they talking about dragons, and this notion, and these people were like, there were no black people during that period. Like,
Well,
it's dragons.
it's a period that didn't exist. It's a period in which it's just ridiculous. It's a fairy tale. It makes no sense. And teachers need to say to their children, this is a fairy tale every time they introduce one. But instead, they teach them as though this has really happened, boys and girls. Well, it didn't really happen. It's not going to happen, and they don't have to worry. White people don't have to worry. Yeah, they do have to worry. Because eventually, somebody is going to say to them, do you not realize that only 15 to 18% of the population of the earth is classified as white? Do you not realize that white people, so-called white people, have been in the numerical majority always? Do you not realize in the numerical minority always? We have always been in the minority. Why are people all of a sudden catching on to the fact that there aren't as many of us as we thought there were? There aren't as many of us as we thought there were, and it's time to get over it. Within 30 years, white people will be a numerical minority in this country as they are all over the world. Get over it. Haven't you anything better to argue about?
There was if y'all could cue that Bernard Shaw comment up, I want to play it. I played this when he passed away because we were in Las Vegas in 2007, and he made a comment to the white men in media that I thought was on point. And Jane, as I'm sitting here, looking at this, we are still operating in America where you still have the first African American, the first woman, the first Latino, the first Asian. And I was looking at Ron Brownstein's Twitter feed, and where you have these Republican folks who are polled, and they say that racism against white people is just as bad or even more so bad discrimination as it is against black people. And you have the folks like Donald Trump and Turning Point USA and all these people and this conservative media machine that's driving this. And I keep telling people, Rupert Murdoch and Lachlan Murdoch, they know it's all BS, but they are feeding this fear of their white viewers, and they're driving in. They're saying, they're coming, they're coming. That's what all this crap is with the migrants and sending folks away. They're coming, they're coming, they're coming. When anybody who understands the demographic patterns of any country, you cannot have a future if you do not replace population. Now, the great replacement theory. Hey, it ain't, white people stop having kids. Sorry.
Don't ask every white woman who wants to make a living and get an education to have children. They aren't going to do it. They're going to wait until they're 42, and then it will be too late. And then they'll say, "Oh my goodness, well, what am I going to do about this situation? Look what society did to me." People, get over it. By the time these young people get ready to have children, they will realize that as the hole in the ozone layer gets larger and larger, more and more sunlight is allowed to enter our environment, and more people who have pale faces are going to die of melanoma, which is a skin cancer that you get if you don't have enough melanin in your skin. Let me tell you, people of color are going to be very much in demand for reproduction in the future. Mark my words, you're laughing now, but you wait 20 years. You won't even have to wait 20 years, because they're going to see that if they want their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren to survive, they're going to have some melanin in their skin. That's the way it's going to be. This is going to take care of itself. And all the silly stuff that you've got going on about the Little Mermaid today is going to fade into the past, and we're all going to just laugh ourselves silly over it. That anybody would get upset about this is totally ridiculous. And it proves the ignorance. It proves the self-imposed ignorance of the so-called white population of the United States of America. And we've got to start, that's another thing, we've got to stop calling this country America and start calling it the United States of America. because the word united is the most important part of that title, and we better start to use it, because we had 4 years of someone who tried to divide us. And this very kind of thing is what happens when you have somebody who is trying to divide people on the basis of the color of their skin.
In my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, when I was writing it, the publisher said, well, there were several publishers rejected it. And they were like, well, but, you know, but I get it, but what should be done? And I said, what should be done? I said, is what Jane is doing, is what Tim Wise is doing, is what other white folks are doing. That is having honest, full, in-your-face conversations saying, you have got to understand what the truth is, what the reality is. And it must be happening in country clubs, in meetings, places where I'm not at. It must be happening at dinner tables. And so, and I love those videos that took place in 2020 of these kids basically cussing out their parents who were voting for Trump. And these young white kids, they were like, Mom and Dad, you know what the hell you're talking about?
Yeah.
Because they were challenging them. What they were saying is, you're not going to pass this on to me. Linda Tirado is a journalist, and she talked about the racism of her parents. And she was talking about the ring around the tub, and her daughter was taking a bath or something. And then she was basically saying, we're white. We don't leave a ring around our tub. That's just those dirty black kids. And Linda, she tweeted this. Linda said, I will not allow my child to go visit with my parents because my child is not going to learn their racism. That's what has to, I say, y'all, this ain't for black folks to solve. This is where white folks gonna challenge each other and say, no, you're not gonna make those comments in front of me and have a belief. We must be a constant of challenging of this nonsense, Jane.
Well, we've all learned to be racist. Anything you learn, you can unlearn. It's time to unlearn our racism, and it's also time to put not the thing that everybody is talking about now. CRT. For me, CRT means curriculum respecting truth. Now, who could argue with curriculum that respects the truth? When we start really telling the truth, it will change the way children feel about one another and the way teachers feel about the children who come to them as students.
Panelists, let's see. I'm going to start with the educator first. I'm a Congo. You get the first question for Jane Elliott.
Wow, it's truly an honor to talk to you, Ms. Elliott, for all of just the work that you've done and inspiring so many of us who do this work in diversity education. I just really want to thank you. The question that I have for you is, could you speak a little bit to the reverse aspect of this? Because I hear people talking about a black person playing a Little Mermaid, but they've had nothing to say about the over 100 white characters throughout history, actors who have played non-white people like Othello and Genghis Khan and Cleopatra. Could you speak a little bit to that hypocrisy?
That hypocrisy is what put us where we are today. We're absolutely determined as palefaces not to admit the truth and not to see the truth. And when you walk into a room, or as happened with me, I was giving a speech at a college at the university in Texas. In the middle of my remarks, some teacher stood up and said, I just look for the person's heart. We deliberately teach people to ignore the largest organ on a person's body, inch by inch, which is their skin, in order to think we have to get along with them. This is so ridiculous that we are going to pretend that the Little Mermaid couldn't possibly have been anything but white. And first, it's a fairy tale, but the first modern human beings that evolved on this earth were not white. Whites came last, and we are going to go first. Make no mistake about this. Long after we so-called white people have died of melanoma or some other problem because of the lack of melanin in our skin, all these people of color will still be there, and they'll still be productive, and they'll still be creative, and they'll still be doing wonderful things, just like they were when they managed to populate every landmass on the face of the earth. People of color from countries in Africa at the equator originally populated every landmass on the face of the earth. Why are we afraid to admit that, and why aren't we teaching that? Why aren't we teaching that this continent, what we call the United States of America, this continent, was discovered by people of color between 20,000 and 10,000 years before Columbus was a gleam in his father's eye. It's time for us to stop teaching the lie and start teaching the truth. It will make everything easier for everyone. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Representative Shannon.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Jane, for your work. I worked as a diversity trainer for years, and a lot of the training that we used was based off of previous videos you've done. So I know you've been doing this for a long time. This whole controversy is completely ridiculous. That is some of the best singing that you've ever heard in any Little Mermaid movie. And the only thing that I'm mad about is that they showed the trailer now, and we have to wait until the middle of next year to actually see the movie. That's the only crime that I see. But here's my question for you. A lot of times when we see white people who are very educated on racial justice issues, when you talk to them, they will tell you that personally their families have discarded them, or other white people just sort of chalk them up as to be traitors for talking about standing for racial justice. Do you feel like, has that personally happened to you? And do you feel like folks like yourself and others who have done a lot of this work have been able to really make a dent into really educating white folks?
Hell yes, it's happened to me. I have been discarded by everybody who knew me as a child or as a young person. My mother kicked me out of the family after my father died because she said I have ruined their reputation of the whole family with that eye color thing. So that I understand that. I understand her anger. And I suppose I should feel sad about that. And I did cry for about 5 minutes, and then I got over that because my life was much better when I no longer had to go over and babysit my mother. So yeah, that's one of the things you do. If you put your head above the parapet, somebody's bound to try to shoot it off. So if you don't want to go into this kind of situation, just keep your mouth shut and go along to get along. And remember that the only thing necessary for the perpetuation of evil is for good people to do nothing. And as long as we continue to do nothing, this situation will continue to fester and boil. But when enough of us stand up and say, no, you're not going to do that in my presence. No, you're not going to tell that black joke in my presence because, number one, you don't know what you're talking. You can tell Irish jokes in my presence if you want to because I'm Irish and I know how strange we are. But you're not allowed to tell, I'm fussy about the jokes I'll allow in my presence. And many of the things we say are not funny at all to the ones who are on the receiving end of it. And when people say, well, you didn't understand, I say, wait a minute. The way you say it is the problem, not how I take it.
Scott Bolden.
Hi, Professor. I'm not only a big fan, I just love you for what you've done and what you stand for. I think the greatest example of white America taking over or projecting an image is through their religion. That Jesus was blue-eyed and blonde-haired, when the Bible says that the region he was born in, Palestine, or what we believe to be the Middle East now, that he was of matted hair and olive skin, and it made sense. I'd love to get your comment on that. And then secondly, if all of this is true, if none of us are born with a racism gene, we're taught environmentally,
Right.
Then why is it so hard? Why can't we get a national dialogue on race going where you have those fearless conversations? Roland talks about his book and, table conversations with family and friends, but leadership mandates more than that, doesn't it? That we have this national dialogue. Clinton and Obama just could not get it going and were criticized for it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on those two issues.
Well, I don't remember what the two issues were, but I'll tell you how I think about this.
Well, one was Jesus
Women of
and
color,
Christianity.
women of color can solve this problem. Women of color can solve this problem. They know what the problem is, and they know how it has to be solved. And they're going to come forward and they're going to take care of it. We aren't going to have a choice as to whether we have a dialogue about this from now on. We're going to have to start telling the truth because the very survival of this nation depends on our being able to take advantage of all the brilliance that is in those minds of people of color, which we have denied. If your children and your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren haven't read the book Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, have you read it?
I have not, ma'am, but I will.
Get that book and read it this week, and then show it to every one of the younger people that you deal with, because we have denied and we have refused to acknowledge and recognize and take advantage of all the brilliance that is in the kind of people who discovered this continent and every other continent on the face of the earth. It's time to start talking about this honestly, but when you try to talk to most white people about racism, the first thing they'll say is, I don't see color. Now, It's time for people to stop, refuse. Have you had that said to you recently? I don't see color, right? And,
Oh, heard it many
I
times.
work
oh
in
yeah,
big
oh yeah.
corporate law. Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah, and every time some fool melanemic woman says that to me, I say, I knew that you didn't see color, because if you saw color, you wouldn't have your hair that color. So I guess you really don't see color. And then she gets all upset and angry and says, "You don't mean what? You don't know what I'm talking about." I said, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. You don't want to see you don't want to relate to a person unless their skin is the color that you approve of,
Right.
madam. There are no white people on this earth. If you
Right.
want to read about what happens to white people, Google Tanzania. And in Tanzania, there is a large group of albinos. And you'll find out how
Mm.
ugly it is. Yes, have you Googled Tanzania? Do you know about Tanzania and how albinism is treated there? Because if you don't, you really ought to take a look at that. It will change your attitude where color is concerned in a hurry. People, we
Mm.
are all shades of brown. Get the National Geographic magazine for April of 2018 and read it. Everybody should do that because it's a short, simple description of what's going on in this country, what color is, where it came from, and how very, very how valuable melanin is.
This was, I was in the room when this happened. Bernard Shaw got the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Association of Black Journalists in 2007. And he said this, and this was one of the things where, you know, I wish Bernie had said it when he was the chief anchor at CNN on the air to the world. Play it, folks, and then we'll talk to Jay on the flip side.
Wake up. Wake up. Globally, you are an island speck
Get off the white man part.
in an ocean of color. The reins of power will weaken, and so will your grip, if you do not faithfully and fulsomely support our nation's greatest strength, diversity. If you do not share, you will lose. Diversity. Diversity is not racial, ethnic, or gender encroachment. Diversity is our national survival. To you caught in the middle, stay vigilant. You must stay strong. You must carry on. If not you, who? To you, starting careers, embrace risk. Mold change, making it work for you. Better to walk the plank.
So Jane, I wanted to, what he laid at he was specifically talking to white men. And I remember the faces in the room, they were kind of like, oh my God, did he go there? That was 2007, 15 years ago when he said that. And when we look today, when we look at the numbers, we look at who still is in control. There's been some change. Sure, a black woman is president of MSNBC. Sure, a black woman is president of ABC News. But the reality is when we talk about who controls the images, newspapers and digital and movies and television, it is still white men. And that's why this battle continues. And what he said there, you got to stay vigilant and keep fighting. Thing that you've been doing, what I've done, what others have doing, because that's the only way it changes. We cannot give up.
But what we're saying is white men. These are not white men. These are pale, stale males who will be boys all their lives until somebody teaches them the truth about who they are, what they are, and where we all came from. The first modern human being on this earth was undoubtedly a person of color, and we've got to get over the idea of more than one race. There's only one race on the face of the earth. Until we give up the idea of several different races, that's how long we're going to have this problem. These aren't racial problems. These are problems of ignorance. You can't change the color of your skin, but you can change the ignorance of your mind, and we could do that. And education could do that. Education should have done that by now. But instead, we are still teaching the same old nonsense. It's time to start teaching the truth.
The gentleman, the young man who's writing a book on you called me and he interviewed me, and he said, Roland, are you surprised that there are not more Jane Elliots? And I said, no, it's not surprising. I said, because it takes a level of courage to say what needs to be said. And I've said there should be 10,000, 100,000, 1 million Jane Elliots and Tim Wises and others. I said, because that is what it's going to take. I said, because you have to confront it head on. That eye test, again, when people play those videos, they still go around when you said, how many of y'all in this room would trade places with a black person? And nobody says anything because they know what did Chris Rock say? Ain't a white man in America want to trade places with me and I'm rich. Because they know what that history has been.
But you see, there's more than 10,000 Jane Elliots. There are a whole lot more black women than that. And every woman of color has forgotten more since breakfast than I will ever learn about racism. They have the answer because they know the problem. They know how it feels to be right on the receiving end of it, and they do not want to cause that feeling in anyone else. If you haven't had that experience, you don't realize how damaging it is. They have had that experience, and they're going to be the ones who lead us out of this mess. Make no mistake about that. They are going to be the ones who lead us out of this mess.
Jane, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate you speaking truth. Thank you for always taking our call. I tell people all the time, one of the flat out best panels I ever did was you and I hanging at University of Michigan. We could have went on and on and on. I feel sorry for the moderator because she was trying to ask questions. I'm like, just let us do what we do.
We'll listen to you later. We have more to talk about than you.
Indeed. Jane, you take care. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for calling. Goodbye now.
All right, take care. All right, folks. Jane Elliott there. Fascinating conversation. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland. Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?